My name's Mark Cole. Here we are at Zamperini Field, Torrance, California. I grew up really close to here in Redondo Beach, California. Kind of was always interested in aviation and flight from a young age. Airplanes and rocket ships and tractors and ships and trains, not unlike a lot of little boys. That kind of stuff always fascinated me, and it kind of fascinates me to this day. I'm 31 years old, so I'm a little bit older than most of the students in the program here at Sling Pilot Academy. I kind of pursued a few other career options before deciding to dive into the full-time aviation program. I used to work in the surf and outdoor apparel industry, and for a long time that was a really fun industry to be in. I'm a passionate surfer and outdoorsman. I love hiking and camping. I ride my mountain bike super often. So those type of outdoor activities and outdoor sports really appealed to me, and I kind of, by a little bit of luck and some good choices and preparation and opportunity, fell into that work as a full-time career. I worked at a few companies, one of them called Rip Curl, one of them called Hippie Tree, and another one of them actually just got hired. I thought I left that industry, but I just picked up some part-time work at a skate shoe company called Globe. But that's just part-time work while I pursue this program to do the aviation thing full-time. I obtained my private pilot's license at this airport at Zamperini Field like 3 years ago, and that was kind of just fulfilling a lifetime goal. I knew I wanted to be a pilot for a long time, but it's just a question of finding the time and allocating the resources in terms of, it's a financial investment, so whether you need to save some money or figure out how you're going to pay for it, it's definitely an important consideration. But I felt, in 2015 or so, that the time was right to make that happen, and I worked with a really cool instructor called Keith Nichols, and we got along really well, and we flew out of this airport. Did my private pilot training in a pretty standard 172, 6-pack, steam gauges, definitely no G1000. And I felt like that was really cool to kind of learn in the more traditional way. I know ForeFlight existed back then, but I definitely didn't have it, and I think it was pretty new in general. So it was cool. My grandpa flew P-47 Thunderbolts in World War II, so there's kind of an aviation history in my family. My parents, not so much, but definitely my grandparents on both sides were involved in aviation, either for working in the aerospace industry or actually flying in the Second World War. So that was kind of cool to achieve that goal. It meant a lot to me, and I enjoyed flying, especially growing up in LA. You hear so much about the traffic and the congestion. It was really cool to be able to just take off right out of here 10 minutes from my house and fly over everybody in traffic, whether I'm going to San Diego or going snowboarding up in Big Bear or up to Ventura or Oxnard. Aviation really opens up a lot of possibilities in terms of how many cool things you can get done in one day. So I've had a lot of experience doing stuff like that, coupling my aviation interests with my other interests and flying up to Mammoth and going snowboarding or what have you. There's just so much that can be done, and the perspective while you're in the air it's pretty different than, driving different places. So in terms of my training to obtain my private pilot's license, a couple of the challenges I faced along the way, pretty typical issues, but nothing too terrible. Honestly, a lot of the issues I faced were self-inflicted. It's tough getting your pilot's license while you're, doing a full-time job, because it requires a certain amount of dedication and focus. And when you have a lot of interests like me, it's pretty tough to juggle everything. And I'm not the type of person that can just drop everything and focus on one thing. So, it can get tough. And then if you're trying to work and make money and dedicate those, that's why I kind of mentioned the financial side of things, because you need to be prepared to, I kind of told myself like, okay, I'll fly once a week, and I might spend $300-400 a week on flight, and that's something I could sustain through a long term. I kind of wish I would have focused. I wish I would have looked at the total cost of the training and just allocated that money somehow. So I didn't just see that $400 leaving my account every month, because that kind of stressed me out. Trying to juggle everything with rent and, all your other expenses. It was definitely something that I should have maybe put a little more thought into, because at a few times it caused me to be like, you know what, maybe I'll take a couple weeks off and let the funds build up again. But as everybody knows, when you take that time off, you get rusty, and it actually takes you more time in the long run if you do that kind of stuff. So it definitely took me a little bit longer to obtain my private pilot's license than I would have liked. And it was because of those sustained breaks in between. Had I done it differently, I would have, allocated that money and made sure that I was focused and flying on a very regular basis. And that's what's kind of cool about the Sling Pilot Academy. It is like a compressed and full-time format. Some people like myself choose to work 10, 15 hours a week outside of the academy, but in terms of flying every day and staying focused, it really helps in that regard. And so that kind of segues nicely into the comparison between my private pilot training in a 172 kind of pay-as-you-go, fly-as-you-go format versus training in the Sling and training every day. And the Sling's a really cool airplane. I probably don't need to tell you guys that. I'm sure everyone else has plenty of good things to say about the airplane. The things I like about it the most, I like how advanced the design is. It's kind of a no-brainer coming off of a 172 that was probably built in the 80s or 90s versus a plane that has a little over 1,000 hours on the airframe, which is nothing in the long run. So it's been exciting flying with the glass cockpit. It makes a lot of things easier, but it definitely makes a couple things harder, or at least it takes some getting used to in terms of programming the systems and not being up in the air and trying to figure out how to activate approaches or fly specific procedures. But once you get all that stuff down, gosh, it makes a lot of things a lot easier, that's for sure. And also from kind of a environmental perspective, it's really impressive how efficient the Rotax engine is and how little fuel this plane sips compared to a Cessna with a Lycoming engine. That's nice from an environmental point of view, and as well as it's nice, obviously, if the school's paying for less fuel, they're going to be able to get you through a full program for significantly less cost than some of the competitors. I went and looked at a couple other competitors, when I was kind of deciding what my next move was, when I was still working at my old job, I was like, okay, the aviation thing is just looking nicer and nicer based on the pilot shortage, based on the opportunities that a couple of my friends that have already been into the commercial flying realm have been telling me about. I was like, okay, this is starting to get a little silly. Why am I putting off this possible career? I love flying. I'm pretty good at it. Like, this seems like a natural fit. So I started looking into the full-time programs and what's out there. Living here, I was like, I would like to continue to live in the South Bay, Los Angeles area rather than move to somewhere or commute really far away. So I was starting to look around. I looked at the program at Long Beach. I was like, okay, at least I could drive there. It's a little farther than I would like, but not the end of the world. Definitely got a bit of a pyramid scheme vibe over there. Like, everybody was in it for themselves, and that's fine. I understand how people are incentivized, as flight instructors and this or that, but I'm not the first person to say this, but shout out to all the flight instructors that are trying to go to the airlines. I'm sure I'm going to be one of those flight instructors very shortly, but it's really nice to have the opportunity to fly with someone, with an instructor who's passionate about aviation and not trying to go to the airlines. There's a couple instructors here at the Sling Pilot Academy that are trying to go to the airlines, and then there's a couple instructors who are just guys that love to fly and that love to train people, and that's like really hard to find. It's so impressive because these guys are so focused on safety and instilling good habits rather than just being like, do you meet the minimum requirements? Yes, okay, we're done. It's like, no, these guys are passionate about flying. That's what they've dedicated their lives to, and we're so lucky to be able to learn from people like that, because they're not a dime a dozen like the people that and I'd say the same thing about my instructor I had for my private over on the other side of the airport. Just a great guy. he hears me on the radio when I'm flying around and texts me. It's classic. So these guys are actually really savvy regarding like search engine marketing and finding ways to get their name out there. It's been really impressive to see how they've built this place. When I first saw this place, like probably half of it wasn't even here. They have like twice the aircraft now that they had when I first checked out the campus. Basically, the guys who founded this place are more entrepreneurs than anything else. They saw a need in the market for an academy that could train pilots and do it better than anyone else is doing it, and they went and did it. So it's been super impressive. I saw an ad, or maybe it was an article in one of the local newspapers, and I was like, what? There's a academy over at Torrance? I thought I knew everything at Torrance. I got my private here, I live down the street. So the first thing I did is went and checked it out and talked to the people here, and they were super friendly and super flexible. You know, they were just like willing to totally work with me based on any concerns or, you know, flexibility issues or scheduling. They just wanted, and I was like, whoa, these people are new. They fly these cool new airplanes. They're gonna be incentivized to make sure that I have a good experience as one of the first people in the program versus an existing established campus that kind of like could take me or leave me. They've got a line of people out the door to get in there and get out, and they're not really going to care about each person's progress as much as a place that's new, like the Sling Pilot Academy would. So that was kind of my judgment. I mean, it's actually significantly less money too, so that played a big role. But those two things were kind of like the reasons why I was like, you know what, I'm ready to do this, let's make it happen. So I came into the program with about 90 hours total time, which I felt like was ahead of most of the people that started at the instrument level. A couple of the people had just got their privates. Some of the people have basically what you need to get your private but haven't taken their check ride yet. And then a couple people had, you know, maybe twice as many hours as me. So I felt like I was kind of average. That being said, I got my private pilot at Zamperini here at Torrance, and that was a huge advantage in terms of being used to the LA airspace. I don't know if this is true, but people definitely call it the most congested airspace in the world, in the country. It definitely feels like that sometimes, and having the experience of knowing this airspace, knowing the LAX Class Bravo, really helps when you're trying to learn new things to come in with that base knowledge, because some of the people that have twice as many hours as me, they're not used to talking to SoCal controllers. They're not used to VFR flight following. Why do you need that? And it's like, because we'd like to stay alive today. So that being said, it was a huge advantage to obtain my private at this airport, or anywhere. Same thing can be said for anywhere in the LA area, whether it's Long Beach, John Wayne, I don't know, Hawthorne, Santa Monica, plenty of great airports around here. So in terms of the financial side of going through your pilot training, it's definitely a huge commitment, and I really empathize with people that it holds them back from going further in their training, because it held me back for a really long time. You know, I paid for all my pilot training out of my own pocket. I would say I wish I had wealthy parents, but maybe I do have wealthy parents, but they kind of believe in making you obtain your, you know, I got an undergraduate degree from UC Irvine, which they helped me pay for, which was super cool, and I feel really lucky because I know plenty of people that their parents don't have the savings or the ability or resources to pay for a college degree. So when it came to doing my pilot training, my parents basically, you know, they told me I was on my own, and I felt fine about that, because if it was something I really wanted to do, it's a big investment, and I wouldn't want anybody going into this route or going down this path because they kind of wanted to do it, you know. When it comes down to it, when you get in these little planes and you take off, you're really taking your life into your own hands, and you're also responsible for your passengers' safety as well. So I don't really want any pilots up there that aren't fully committed to this path. And having to make that financial commitment is a really good way of weeding out people that aren't ready to step in or dive in head first, I guess you could say. So in terms of this, or, you know, after I got my private, I took a couple years to, you know, make that final decision that I want to, you know, go all the way and get my commercial rating and instrument rating, multi-engine, etc. So how I'm doing it, I saved a bunch of money while I was working in my old career, or at least I saved what I hope is enough money to get me through the 6-month program till I become a flight instructor and can actually get a paycheck again. That's going to be really nice. After being in the program for about a month and just watching the meter tick downwards and downwards, it's going to be quite nice to actually get a paycheck again. So I actually went and got a part-time job too. Not that that's going to make a huge impact in the financial element, but it's going to at least get me some spending money and stuff if I want to go grab a beer with the boys or whatever. I won't feel so bad. So, and then in terms of the tuition for the program, I had already mentioned that it's significantly less than any of the competitors that I've seen, which is a huge advantage because you're flying such nicer equipment than most of the competitors too. So it's kind of a no-brainer to do a program like this. It is still a big investment, and so I've obtained a loan to pay for it. And the loan seems, it seems like a ton of money at the time, but then if you start looking at your career earnings potential and what you're going to be paid once you're in the airlines or flying charter operations or whatever your choosing path might be, that money starts to seem a little bit less significant than just looking at a big lump sum. So, but I mean, like any investment or like any endeavor, it may not pan out, but what I tell myself is you'll never know if you don't try. So at a certain point, you just kind of have to face your fears and say, I'm making a decision and I'm gonna do this. And I hope it pans out to plan, but if it doesn't, we'll roll with the punches and we'll figure out the next step. Yeah, so it's kind of funny, like most people, when they go into the aviation world, they're very focused on, either like I can't wait to get to the airlines, that's my goal, or I can't wait to fly Gulfstreams for so-and-so, or whatever their plan might be. I enjoy flight. That's kind of as simple as it needs to, or it's complicated as it needs to get. I just enjoy flight. So once I become a flight instructor, I'm looking forward to continuing to learn, because obviously there's no better way to learn than to teach other people. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to getting to my minimum time as a flight instructor and seeing what opportunities present themselves at that time. I feel like it's almost a little silly to start making concrete plans now. I need about 1,300 hours to go before I can start acting on any of those plans. So I'm just gonna get to my minimums and see what opportunities present themselves. I know people who fly for the airlines. I know people who fly charter operations. Everybody seems to love their life. Haven't really talked to any pilots that hate their life, so that's a good indication. I love traveling. I love, going to all kinds of different places in the world to go surf or see other sites. So I mean, I'm really looking forward to the traveling aspect. I love photography, so it seems like a career that is really going to work well for me personally. I used to work in an office. It's not a terrible thing working in an office. A lot of people say it's the worst thing ever, but if you enjoy what you're doing, working in an office isn't that bad. That being said, having a career where every day has the potential to be different is something that really appeals to me. Monotonous routines can be less fun than jumping in a cockpit and going somewhere new and cool, and always learning and always expanding the potential of your knowledge. It's really appealing to me, so I'm looking most forward to that.